Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where we talk about whatever the hell I want, or sometimes let my friends pick too. Which this is a classic review of the film Pleasantville. And Adam, my good friend here, wanted to talk about this one. And Adam, before we jump into talking about the film, thank you for coming on. And where can people find you?
Letterboxd curb writer. Yeah, I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit, but if this is the first time you see me, obviously I'm not.
Yeah.
I, I review everything I watch, and I watch a lot. Not as much as some people that I'm looking at right now, but I do watch a lot. I'm approaching nearly 600 films for the year, which is has to be a record for me, honestly. Yeah, hence why I've gotten fat.
Be honest, I'm not in that great a shape right now either. So gonna be working on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're here to talk about the 1998 film Pleasantville, which this is from writer director Gary Ross, who has an interesting filmography with
Mhm.
Big, Seabiscuit, the first Hunger Games, and Free
Yeah.
State of Jones and Ocean's 8. So like there's a very interesting
It's
range here, and I feel like one of these is considerably better than the others, and it's Pleasantville. So,
yeah. Yeah.
but Adam, why did you want to talk about Pleasantville?
There's a few reasons. Pleasantville, I watched a pretty seminal time in my life. In when did this come out? You said 1998, so I probably watched it in 1999 when I was early 20s. Shush, about my age. And we spoke a while back in my first ever interview with you. Actually, one of your questions was about my favorite use of a song in a film, and this film popped up with Fiona Apple's version of Across the Universe, and you'd never seen this film, so
Mhm.
I wanted you to see this film, and it's the only way I could push you into doing it was by making you talk about it. And
If
it's
you
good because I
make me
want to talk
do a
about it because
video, it will make me watch it quicker. So there you go. That's
yeah,
a secret.
yeah, and it's also one of those films that I don't know that enough people know about it, especially modern, modern generation. It has gone under the radio radar, and it's got people, young Toby Maguire, young Reese Witherspoon, Paul Walker. So it's got a good cast from that era, and it's just a fantastic film. Last time we did one of these, we spoke about The Truman Show. This
Mhm.
is a very thematically dense film like The Truman Show, and I've found that I gravitate towards these films a lot, as in they are high on my favorite list. So yeah, so there are the main reasons,
There we go.
which was a lot of reasons.
And this was the first time watching this for me, and it blew me away. First time watch, and
Yeah,
it
so stoked.
it is so dense, and like this shot up to like my top five of that year in terms of movies, because like
Mm.
I did a whole entire project where I just sat there and was like ranking every year of cinema for myself in a
Wow.
spreadsheet, and this one it spoke to me, and I think it's because this film is timeless in terms of you could,
Mm.
and it's pretty bad that it is because that says something about humanity. But there's always a
We
period
never learn.
where there are the ostracized, there are the targeted, and today in particular, it's definitely it's immigrants in America. It's gay people, it's trans people, it's anybody who's being targeted for being different and being targeted in the veil of this change is bad for us. We need to stick to our traditions. This is how things have always been and should stay that
Yep.
way. And
Yep.
that is at the very core of this. And you know what was interesting is I'm sitting and watching this film and thinking about, oh, how beautiful of the story this is of just, people having self actualization. And this film, I thought, could have just kept going, where it's just like, it's really about people finding and realizing who they really are. But then,
Yeah.
but then, a group of dudes in this town had to go ruin it, and it's
Yeah.
and then it was that moment where I'm starting to realize it's like I think the moment where I realized where the true conflict was going to come in this film was the hilarious scene that we were talking about on my other show we just recorded, which is when William H. Macy's character, who's the dad of the family, walks in, it's like, "Honey, I'm home," and just begrudgingly starts trudging through every room in the house, being like, "Honey, I'm home," and just being like, and not being like, "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" That's like, "No, honey, I'm home."
Yeah.
and then, and then,
Where's my dinner?
where's my dinner? And I
He
think
says
that
it,
was the,
the best line readings of all time. He says it three times in three very different ways, and each one of them is hilarious. And it's some of the best line reading you'll ever see, I think. It's so great.
well, and this was peak William H. Macy because like this was just
Yeah.
a few years after Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
This was around Boogie Nights time, which obviously that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge ensemble, but like, sure does he make an impact in
Yeah.
that movie. Um, but like, that was the moment where I started realizing, oh, not everybody's going to be happy with this new actualization that everybody's having in this town. And of course, it's the
Part of that commentary is the people who aren't happy are the older white men who make the rules and
exactly,
the rules that favor them. So when people start being nonconformists and living a life and changing, that goes against their. It stops benefiting them. So that's why they try and stop it because they stop getting the benefit. They don't have their dinner made when they come home.
yeah,
Things like that, you know.
like you might
Yeah.
actually have to make dinner sometimes.
This movie says so much. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
What?
yeah.
Which I think one of the moments that profoundly hammered this home to me was there's a trial at the end of this, and you have the who's the actor who plays like the
The
town
mayor.
elder guy.
That's M. Emmett Walsh, isn't it?
I definitely would have recognized if it was M. Emmett Walsh. I'm trying to
It's
figure
not
out.
Emmett Walsh.
Oh, now I'm concerned that it's going to be like a. Oh, it's a JT Walsh. Oh, that's why.
JT Walsh.
Yep.
Sorry, my bad.
Who was in Sling Blade and A Few Good Men.
Yeah,
Oh, Good Morning Vietnam. That's where I recognized him from. Good Morning Vietnam.
he's been in
Hated
a
him
lot.
in that too.
Yeah.
But like he he says, I don't have that in me. And that's the
Mm.
whole that's where it's just like
Yeah. Yes,
I
you do.
don't want to change. I don't perceive the possibility of change because this is who I am. There's no budging, no nothing. And that was when the color changed. I'm just like, that was such a profound moment
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
shows the hypocrisy and the ignorance and the dense perspective that so many people in situation like this have, that it's like you could live in this new existence perfectly fine and everybody will be happy.
Yes.
and
Yeah. Yep.
and that's the thing too, because it's like I feel like that's the biggest challenge, because it's like, well, for those people to be happy, then I'm going to be unhappy. You don't know that. Like,
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's right. Well, that's the thing. I think that they stop being benefited from the nonconformist attitude. I think that's the one of the big selling points or the big themes is, yeah, the people in power want to remain in power by treading on you, keeping you down, keeping you oppressed. Like there's a big oppression thing, even like from because this is set. I don't think we mentioned that this is set. It starts off in the '90s with Reese Witherspoon and
yeah,
Tobey Maguire, and they magically get transformed into a 1950s sitcom, so a black and white sitcom. So it's very of that very wholesome in nature, and everyone lives their lives. The mum stays at home, the dad works, and everything is on schedule all the time. And basically, they live in this big dome like the Truman Show,
Yeah.
and they just live their lives. And these two people come in and disrupt it, and the kids start changing color because they start having sex, um, and then just more things go on from there. And Joan Allen has a bath, and the tree sets on fire.
Yeah.
And the firemen don't know how to put out a fire because all they do is
There's a cat in a tree. Jump into action.
This town is so idyllic and perfect that nothing bad has ever happened. So, yeah, it's such a fascinating film, and I really want more people to see it.
Yeah, it's, you have like that setup where it's like, yes, this is a 90s film. It is a 90s era. You have Tobey Maguire's David, who's just obsessed with this sitcom, Pleasantville.
Fanboy.
And,
Yeah.
It's so funny because I had a classmate in high school who literally talked about Firefly and Serenity every single day of high school. And it's just like, I knew a person just like this. And it's just like, that was their thing. Like, this was their thing. They love this thing. And that's Tobey Maguire's character. And like, the moment where they have him like trying to talk to this girl who winds up being like halfway across the parking lot or whatever.
That's great, right?
And you have Reese Witherspoon, who's his sister, who's like the cooler girl, who's more liberated. She doesn't really care about school.
Popular.
She's doing other things.
Yeah.
And perfect meta casting of having Don Knotts playing this TV repairman who's the one who traps them basically in this world, and him being like, oh, I finally found somebody who loves this show so much. And then he starts getting mad because David's changing things. And for the better, because that's the thing. There's this this idyllic American thing. It's like things were so much better in the 50s, which on the day I watched this.
Were they? Yeah.
Well, on this day I was watching this. Earlier in the day, I was at lunch with my mom for my birthday, and she went on this whole thing about how the 50s were so much better. Life was so much better. Then I'm like, and then I was watching the movie, I'm just being like, Because that's the thing. It's just like, life was neater. Life was simpler because everybody was constricted into these societal norms. Women didn't have problems because they didn't get to live.
No.
You just were at home.
And there's a vast lack of diversity in those days as well, right? It was,
Which, like, the way that this film deals with the diversity and the metaphor for that is the color. When people start changing colors, people start having problems with them, and then you're just like, oh. And
I love. There's a good joke in there where he calls. It's his. Long story short, he calls her his colored girlfriend, and it's just because she's in color, not because she's colored. And it's just funny because you just know what they're getting at, and it's just there's obviously a race factor involved in that as well. So, very clever.
That's always perpetual, because the unfortunate thing is there's always prejudice against people that are different, and that metaphor is going to work until humanity changes. And that's why this film's still going to work. And then you have things like, what really spoke to me most is because all of this toxicity around the LGBTQ plus community, and that spoke to me so much watching this, because like the black and white, the gray makeup that Joan Allen had to put on at one point, that just spoke to me in the point of like, she has to be closeted.
Yeah.
and she has to hide who she really is because
Yeah.
people won't look at her the same way anymore. And
Yep.
that is such a profound moment of like, that's exactly it.
That's what. That's exactly why people thought life was better because they were closeted and conformist, and they weren't the true. Weren't allowed to be the true self. Just weren't
Well,
allowed.
and the thing with like everybody's turning gay now, that's not what's
Yeah,
happening. It's just that people
they
are
always
able
were.
to be gay now
Yeah.
and open about it. To some extent,
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
there's still plenty of issues going on, but like at least more people are able to feel comfortable being that and being out about
Yeah.
it. And
Hmm.
that's what it is. And this film works for that. It works for race relations. It can work for any marginalized group of people. And that's what I feel like
Hmm.
is so universal about this film and what works so well. And you have this cast, and like Tobey Maguire does such a great job here because like I'm one of those people over the years who are just like, is Tobey Maguire a good actor? Like how good of an actor
It's
is
all
he?
right.
And like I
Yeah.
always loved him as Spider-Man. It was a very specific Peter
Hmm.
Parker that he was playing. And we could
Hmm.
have an endless fight of who's the best Peter Parker, best Spider-Man kind of
Yeah.
thing. But like I don't want to have that conversation right now. That's not important to the
No,
conversation, but
it's like
I think
finding out who's the best Bond.
that or
No, it's not
Batman
worth. It's
or
not
any
worth it.
role that multiple people have
Yeah.
played. But
Yeah.
here, he does such a good job in this film. I think Reese Witherspoon does a really good job.
Absolutely.
I think the
Yeah.
real standouts for me personally, like Joan Allen is so great in this.
John Allen. Yeah.
She is because it's understandable that the young people who are
Yeah.
naturally rebellious, who are naturally
Hmm.
more flexible, make
Hmm.
that turn first. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when it starts happening to adults that there's a profound difference in this town. And that moment in the tub,
Yeah.
the tree lights on fire, is so great because
But that's
it's
also about that's like uh feminine. Look, that's a big feminism point too, because she's. I mean, women in that time they're effectively slaves to their husbands, slaves to the house. They were chained
yeah,
to the kitchen, and that they never left the house because that's where they belonged, right? And yeah, so that's a big, big, big thematic point too.
absolutely. And you have which I was trying to think like how big of an actor was Jeff Daniels when this movie came out because I'm like he's just playing some random guy who like obviously
Not so much.
he had Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
He was one of the side character, like he was the best friend character in Speed, and like he had those kinds of things. I'm sitting here like Jeff Daniels is just some guy that keeps having this fun gag about like, but you left, and then
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
waited. And just like that's hilarious, but where that character goes and
Yeah.
where that
It's
character goes
beautiful.
with Joan Allen's character
Yeah.
is so moving, and the
Yeah.
art,
It's brilliant.
the beauty of it, that I'm
Hmm.
just like screw well. Which also at the end of the movie I'm like thruple. Is this where this
Yeah.
movie is going?
Really? Yeah. I
And
don't think that was going on that direction actually.
so, but like
You have to make two dinners then.
it's just like why is William H Macy? Why is Joan Allen with William H Macy where she could be with Jeff Daniels over here?
Yeah.
And that moment they revealed that painting of her, that was one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I
biggest
mean, yeah.
moments. And then, of course, what happens in response to it was one of the biggest turning points of the film of like, oh, here's the real conflict of this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because to be frank, it takes a while for the like. There's that conflict between Tobey Maguire and Don Knotts, but like it takes a while
Hmm.
for like the real conflict to reveal itself. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the
Yeah. It does.
riots started happening, the destroying of that diner. That was sad. And it's this movie is just so inspiring and so layered, so well acted,
Yeah,
technically so impressive. The transitioning of the colors and that kind of stuff.
yeah,
You
yeah.
just take that for granted at this point, but like that was something really impressive in the late 90s.
Absolutely. It also has, for me, well, some of the most impressive part about it are the characters themselves,
Yep.
the character development. Like, and that's what a lot of it is about. Like the very start of the film, when they're in high school, you can see every point that they're telling is showing how miserable life is for these teenage kids. There's no job prospects when they leave. All this crime is up, blah, blah, blah. So it's no wonder Toby Maguire was in love with this show that had this idyllic world, blah, and it's etc. And then with Reese Witherspoon, she was a popular girl, had fun, went to parties, did the stuff that you do at parties and when you're in high school. And then she goes into the town and she becomes a book nerd, and that's what makes her change. So that's what gives her color, but as in the, yeah, I just so I know I was talking about the characters, but that's one of the strengths of the film is those two characters and their development overall. Yeah.
Which I think one of the most rousing moments of the film is when Toby Maguire gets his color.
Mm,
And like him standing
yes.
up for his mother and
Yeah.
what's right, and him like coming out from behind that he's just this kid that watches this TV show all the time and then really stands up, takes charge, and does something heroic with himself. And
Hmm.
that was
Hmm.
inspiring. I love that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of great moments in this film. So many. Has
But
great use of music too. I'm just looking at my notes here.
mhm.
Um, there's some there's three songs in particular that are fantastic, and that's Etta James. They do at last is just
Yep.
fit in this movie at a perfect point. I distinctly remember when I first watched this film in 1990, whenever it was, when the Buddy Holly Rave On song came on. For some reason, and I would have been stoned at this when I at that age and watching this film, and I just pissed myself. I remember just laughing my ass off when Rave On came on the radio. I don't know why. It's just the opening of the song, but it's still a great use of that song. And then, as I've mentioned a couple of times talking to you, Fiona Apple's Across the Universe is tear jerking. Actually, that's the take on the Beatles song. It's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah, the music was really well done. And that Buddy Holly moment where they turned on the jukebox because they had that was the part where they had just read the new rules, right?
hmm hmm
And that got me because when it was like they read the first couple and it's like, oh, that doesn't seem that bad. That's how they get
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
it all seems reasonable until you keep reading on, reading the fine print, and
yeah,
that was a like that was such a profound moment for me. I'm just like, that's how they get you. And but like when they put that
yeah,
exactly, and then they throw the music on and that girl screams, it's like, you can't do that anymore. And Toby Maguire's like, why not? And it's just
sure we
like,
can.
sure, nobody's gonna stop us. And they just do it.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
know, there's so many, and that's the thing too, because like this doesn't have to be a dystopia. This stuff happens today. But like
yeah,
it's reminiscent of like you can't listen to this, you can't think like that, you can't say that. And that is such a great theme in dystopian literature and films and art that is supposed to be resonant because it's true. That kind of stuff happens all the time. And with like
yeah,
cancel culture, which here's the thing. The moment that society has reached the point where we're trying to cancel culture, when it's like you have people complaining about cancel culture and how we need to get rid of cancel culture while they're still putting banned book lists and
yeah,
stuff like that together
yeah,
when it's just like
yeah,
who originated this cancel culture? I'm pretty sure it was you. And
yeah,
but the thing is it's like you can't cancel my stuff, but we
yeah.
can cancel yours.
That's that same Twitterverse opinion. Like everyone's opinion matters as long as it agrees with mine, as long as
Yeah.
it's the same as mine. Otherwise, if your opinion isn't the same as mine, then you're an idiot. Like you're the worst person in the world.
Mhm.
That's again, it's another thing that this film is saying. Big big time. I think it's just yeah. That's I keep saying the same word. It's all about conformity, like
Yeah,
raging against the machine.
wouldn't that have been something? He just kind of like killing in the name of it just starts playing in the middle of this.
Or the mate whatever I can't remember the name. Bulls on Parade, like from the
Yeah.
Matrix. It's playing on the end credits.
Just like, yeah, that would have been well, and this is a year before the Matrix came out.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
had the Truman Show and you had this coming out. And it's so interesting that the Matrix gets, and this is nothing against the Matrix. I love the Matrix, but the Matrix gets
Mm.
all the credit
Yeah,
for
yeah, it
being
does.
that movie. Because to be
Hmm.
frank, it was a giant hit. Like that was profoundly changed culture. But you had things like Dark City, you had things like
Yes.
Pleasantville and Truman Show that were like building up to that point where I think The Matrix hit a cultural peak of just 1999 was such an interesting year for film.
Yeah.
And I think
Mm.
The Matrix picked up on that wave and just shattered into culture. And of course, it also gave us bullet time and everybody wearing black
Yeah,
leather and
I
stuff
think
like
part of the
that.
Matrix. I think part of the Matrix is, and the Matrix is my third favorite movie of all time. But I think part of its success is its the way it changed cinema, the way it filmed action very differently. No
Yeah.
one had seen that before. But with the Truman Show and Pleasantville, they're very traditionally shot films.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and the thing is,
there's
like,
no,
the Matrix had layers of genre because, like, it is an action movie. It
Mhm.
is that kind of thing too. It has that wider appeal to get like butts in seats, and then they hear the messages too along with
Yeah.
it. This
Mm.
is like this is about the character and the message. There's no
Mhm.
big frills to pull people in. It's
No, no.
like Paul
But
Walker didn't just start like drifting and drag racing in the middle of this and
yeah.
kind of thing. He didn't get there yet. It's a couple more years before he got Fast and Furious. But like, it's that kind of thing where it's just like these films kind of flew under the radar in that way, but were showing
Mhm.
signs of this shift in art. And which I think really climaxed with the Matrix. And then, the 2000s came and the 90s were a very different time, I think, in attitude and were very rebellious. And I feel
Yeah.
like the 2000s have been a counterpoint because, like, I feel like I don't think anybody's going to look back and, like, you know what? Those 2000s and 2010s were such rebellious times. No.
No, yeah. The 2000s was actually a really lame decade.
Yep.
The aughts was a really lame decade in all just speaking globally, like artistically, like there's nothing. I mean, there's some good stuff, but it's not like you look back on a decade like the '80s has all this stuff, the '70s has all this
Yeah.
stuff, but you look back at the thousands and go, "What the fuck happened then? Not much." Like it's a pretty boring decade.
Well, because, like,
It's a pretty
even thinking
boring
about like
decade.
best pictures throughout that decade, it's like outside of Lord of the Rings and like, yeah, The Departed and No Country for Old Men and stuff like that. Generally, a lot of
They're
those
not
years,
groundbreaking.
no, there's a
They're not
lot of
culture
years.
changing, groundbreaking movies, are they? But they're still great. But
Like,
they're
Lord
not.
of the Rings is like the pinnacle of fantasy filmmaking, but outside of that, like No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood are both like instant classic films, but like that's the
Yeah,
thing that
yeah,
like they weren't cultural phenomenons. Lord of the Rings, I feel like
no,
was on some level,
yeah,
but like
yeah,
the
yeah.
rest of that decade, not really, and not like 1999, you don't see dorm rooms with like No Country for Old Men posters and The Departed posters.
No,
You see Fight
no.
Club, you see The Matrix, you see that kind of stuff still today. um
Yep.
23
Back to
years
the Future
later.
still, things like that. Indiana
So
Jones, like you know, yeah, that's but 100% correct. But even if you look at music from that era, just globally artistic, it was a dead decade.
this is
I
why
don't
I
even
listen
remember
to
any
60s
music
and
from that.
70s music.
Yeah, I'm 90s pretty much most of the way, actually.
And
Yeah,
like I grew up, and that could be a whole entire other conversation, but like I grew up listening to like 60s and 70s with like my mom and my
yeah,
grandpa. My
yeah.
grandpa, being an Italian American, if he didn't have Frank Sinatra on, then like what's going on here?
Nah, I get you.
So
Yeah.
like it's
If
it just this was those late 90s were a very specific time, and man, they produced some interesting things. And I hope like I
it's the
think
peak of culture.
I think
I think we're on a bit
29
of downward slope since.
I think 2019 in cinema was the richest year in cinema since probably the late 90s. Because
Yeah,
like I
yep.
remember like sitting there with those Oscars when that was happening in 2019, just being like, holy crap, with like Parasite and Irishman and Knives Out and like
Mm,
like there were
mm.
so many strong films that came out. And then the past couple of years, I don't know if it was 100% because of the pandemic, but we're still feeling that. It's just like something's not hitting the same as that year, and I'm
I
hoping that
think
it didn't peak.
I think great art takes time to come, and during 2020 specifically, I remember saying to my then partner, told her that in the next few years we're going to see some amazing art come out of this because all the creative people have been stuck at home, so they're all writing. This year
Yeah.
we got Everything Everywhere All at Once because that film was written in 2020. We got The Menu. I mean, these things take a couple of years to make, generally at minimum. Like that's a pretty quick turnaround. So during that time, we're still not going to see films. Films are written in 2020, 2021. We're not going to see them still for another 2 or 3 years. I think we've got a good future look ahead, honestly, with cinema.
Just
As
got to
long as
get out of the weeds.
non MCU films, 1,000%, I think we're going to have a good run.
And
I hope
it,
so.
I hope so too. But boy, was this a special time. But Adam, did you have anything else that you
Hmm.
wanted to say about Pleasantville?
Um, Probably, but I've probably said enough too. This, yeah, just honestly can't recommend it enough. Um, it didn't quite hit a 5 star for me. It's 4.5 for a specific reason, and I guess my specific reason is that I've always had a bit of I really get annoyed with films that end in a courtroom. I think it's kind of a bit of a cop out to wind up a story. And this one does that, but it still does it well enough. But for me, it just doesn't sit well with me in general in movies. So I'm not a big fan of courtroom dramas, even though there's some that I like. Um, so this is where I just had to knock off 0.5 star because that's a personal preference of mine.
I
Um,
I will admit I think the ending was a little convenient. Of like
yeah,
we're all here, the whole town's here, for us to
yeah,
have this big moment,
yeah,
and I could see that. I think what it didn't bother me as much because how profound the message turned out to be, and that moment with his
yeah,
confrontation with JT Walsh's character. But this I definitely want to watch this again. I added to my
yeah.
Amazon buy list, so there'll
Yeah,
be
nice.
I'll be adding it to my collection. At
Black
some
Friday sales.
point. What?
You might get a bargain in the Black Friday sales.
I could. That I've been
Yeah,
my phone's been blowing up. It was like Black Friday deals. I'm like, it's Wednesday.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just
I've been getting them since last week here. Like Australia, we jump on a week early. It's bananas.
Best Buy started doing their deals like 3 weeks ago, and I bought a crap ton of stuff that's been progressively
Yeah,
coming in the
man.
mail. So my
I'm
collection,
lucky. I'm lucky. It's payday tomorrow. I've
yeah.
spent my money.
Oh, I guess I should be.
I sent you the image. I sent you a photo. I brought 19
Yeah.
discs so far, and I've got one coming in the mail actually.
Mhm. I
Amazon UK.
I don't know how much more buying I'm going to be doing because I've done pretty good amount recently, but like we'll see if
Mm,
there's any other good deals. I have two lists on Amazon. One of them is new releases, and then other one is just movies that I've watched recently, or maybe like I've gotten that bug of nostalgia. I'm like, I want to watch that again. I remember really liking this, and that's usually the one I send
yeah.
people to buy me gifts. It's like people like
Okay.
it's like it your heart. It's like people are like, you have everything. I'm like, I don't, and here's a wish list that's perfect for you. So I
You
try
don't
to
have
make
small
things easy
soldiers
for
either.
people. Yeah, there you go. But Adam, thank you so much for coming on and 100% recommending this to me because it shot right up my watch list. And I got to
Yeah.
watch it. I loved it.
Hopefully next time I'll give you another slice of gold. Then it's yeah. I was stoked that you loved it. It's yeah. It's yeah. It's nice. It's good when you give a recommend and someone actually enjoys it. So.
But hopefully you all go check this out and enjoy it too. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.